Dear colleague, good morning, good afternoon, good night, because we are connected with all around the world. And we are here in a special place now, the Olympic Museum in Lausanne. Why? Because it's something historical. And we will make a jump in the history of the IOC, in the history of the culture, because what we want to speak today is especially at the beginning about culture. And here we are for another special occasion that we are here to look to a book torn in that is a cartoon book. But usually we are used to a small size. This book is 5 kilos heavy and is something that is very difficult to bring also on the plane because they will stop you. You cannot carry on it. But it's something really special. It is a brilliant idea. When I've seen it, I thought, yes, it's a brilliant idea because also one of our former president of AIPS Africa is a cartoonist, and some of his cartoons are also in this book. It's something really special, and for this reason, I'm very happy to have today with us two really special guests. I remember 2 years ago, one special guest came on our stage during the award ceremony, and he told us that de Coubertin was an AIPS member. So today, we are very glad to have here with us President Thomas Bach. Ciao, Thomas.
Ciao, Gianni.
Ciao. And after also the guy that has the brilliant idea of a book. He's not a journalist, but he wants to try to be a journalist and is asking me the AIPS card. I will ask to you after if we can give him. And is Michael Payne that was with us in the college last year.
Hi, Johnny. Hopefully I can be an honorary journalist after this book.
I hope so, but you know, the people will judge because the problem is we are in front of a book that can be fun, they can be controversial because the cartoon are something special, are part also of the culture and is also journalists because with the drone you can express some feelings, some ideas and so on. Sometimes people are not happy to be on a cartoon. For example, I was always the subject of the cartoon of Mr. Belaid that was our president of Africa, but it was fun. And so now I want to tell this time, because we have with us a young reporter, Silvana from Austria. She is a product of our small school, no? And I think that the first question must come from her. What do you think? Do you agree?
Go on.
It's better than me, for sure.
For sure.
Thank you so much. I've always wondered if you have a sense of humor.
No.
Not really.
No.
Like the IOC, they doesn't have a sense of humor.
No.
They never joke.
They never joke.
No.
So do you actually even like cartoons? So if you look at the newspaper, you never look at the newspaper at the cartoon section?
No, you know, I always say, I hope when I have lost my sense of humor, I will be dead by then.
Especially this year, you need a sense of humor.
You always in life need a sense of humor. And this is also the great advantage, you know, of cartoons. Because if you look at a cartoon, first of all, it makes you smiling or laughing. And, you know, smiling already helps, makes you feeling better and makes others feeling better. And secondly, cartoons, they put issues into perspective. You know, if you look at very serious and complex issues through the eyes of a cartoon, sometimes you come to the heart of the issue. And in any case, you put your thinking into perspective and you see that not every problem is a disaster, is the end of the world, but that you can also address it with a good sense of humor. And therefore, I really think sense of humor is a recipe for survival.
And do you actually have a favorite cartoon?
I have perused there some together with Michael, but there are so many of them that I would not like to highlight one, because then I would give way to interpretations which may not be the right ones. So I think I should restrain myself to suggest to the people to look at it themselves and to find their own favorite.
Mr. President, which message do you have for the cartoonists of the world?
Keep going, and do what you are doing. Help us to put challenges, problems into a perspective, make us smiling, and in this way help everybody in different respects, whether you just enjoy it or whether it helps you to address an issue, or whether it helps you to start the day with an even bigger smile on your face.
Yes. Now I want to to ask him, to Michael, how he has had this crazy idea, because a book of 5 kilos never happened so
you're somehow obsessed with the weight, you know.
Yes, because I have problem, you know, even to put on your legs, sometimes to read is heavy. But how it came this, and also to call so many cartoonists around the world and to convince them to give you the cartoons. What is the secret?
This was my COVID lockdown project. When I was back at the IOC, I always admired, you know, the creativity and skill set of the cartoonists. And I think the very first cartoon I collected was when Atlanta was elected host of the games, you know, against the favorite Athens. And a local Swiss cartoonist did a spectacular cartoon of the Acropolis, replacing the marble columns with Coca-Cola bottles, because Atlanta being the home of Coca-Cola, and having the IOC bowing down to the gods of mammon and money. I mean, it was a pretty edgy cartoon. And I had that hanging in my office, which always used to raise a few eyebrows when journalists would come in, because maybe the IOC did have a sense of humor. I was always seen as not having one. And I thought, listen, it'd be a great idea to tell the history of the Olympics through the creativity of the cartoonist. And it's one of these ideas you have, but you never get round to doing. And COVID suddenly gave me the opportunity, no planes to catch. And so I proceeded to research and find 3,000 cartoons from around the world, which we edited down to 1,200. 400 different cartoonists from 50 countries. And that's also part of the it's part of the magic of just seeing how different cultures approach, as the president said, you know, quite sensitive, complicated issues with cartoons, often with hardly any words, and yet can convey a very powerful message. So I got the cartoons together, and then I thought, well, let's also write a story. I've been very privileged to, you know, have been so close to the Olympic movement for so long, and maybe there are one or two stories that people haven't heard before that could shed a little bit of light as to what was going on behind the scene. And that's the project, how it came together.
No, but the funny thing in this book is that he put the cartoons, but it was an excuse to write also all his opinion, because this is the secret, no? Because with the excuse of the cartoon, after he has given his point of view regarding what happened in the history of the games, in the last part, that is the last part that we have lived together, because we were always around in that period. Because the most are, there is also the part before about Berlin, about many other things, Los Angeles before. But I think that what you enjoy very much, it was to write, because you cannot draw, so you write. And I think that the writing is helping to discuss better some controversial matter. And I think that you did a decent work as journalist. Maybe that you can become an honorary journalist.
My next career, Jenny, thank you.
Yes.
I promise, though, I won't run for presidency of AIPS and challenge you.
But it's not so difficult. Eh? I think that...
this is why he made you honorary, to be sure that you cannot be candidate against him.
But Thomas, we were speaking about culture, no? and here is a young reporter. I think that together, your association and our association are doing the same. We are investing in culture. You have your young reporter project during the Youth Games. We have till now had more than 30 projects. And we begin in 2011, and I made the test in 1995 with athletics, with 20 journalists from around the world. What is your feeling when you meet them? Or perhaps you can ask also some questions.
No, in fact, it's always a pleasure to meet these young reporters whenever I can, and in particular on the occasion of Olympic Games or Youth Olympic Games, because you always get a fresh perspective. You get questions which you would not expect necessarily, and where you have to start thinking, and where you get a feeling how the younger generation is thinking about some of the issues. And at the same time, it's a wonderful opportunity for AIPS to get your working ethos across. And it's a great opportunity for the IOC to get our values across by means of these young reporters to particular their generation. So it's really, as I told you from the very beginning, it's a project which I find exciting, or projects which I find really exciting. And from time to time, I have also the opportunity, when we could still travel, there some visits to different NOCs in Africa or in Asia, for instance, to meet these young reporters and to make this experience. So great project, keep going.
No, because one of our idea is we already did in 2012, but very soon, when it will be possible to travel again, to make also another young reporter here in Lausanne, to know the history, because sometimes it's better to touch with the hand. I think that's Silvana.
You're invited to Olympic House with a whole group, and you can organize the programs there, and then I hope that I can share a lunch with a group and have a good chat.
No, but especially I think that what is important is this exchange of opinion.
He does not even thank for the invitation. It's
but I want to thank you. Thank
No,
you
but
so
thank
much,
you, Silvana.
because it's
Thank
for the
you.
young reporters.
You're saving your president there.
Yeah, we have to work together because we learn so much. So thank you.
The problem is that I'm coming from Jurassic Park, and sometimes my head is not so quick. Because she is the future, no? She is the future, and I think that she is the expression, especially yesterday when she has arrived, and this morning when she has arrived here in the museum, the feeling that she has. And after she will go around to the city to understand. I think that this.
Have you visited the museum?
No, but tomorrow. But when I come here, I saw the racing lines, and I thought, like, finally, I'm in the race too. So it's really nice to be here.
And have you been to Olympic House?
No, I've not been there. But you sent an invitation, and then.
No, it's issued. Where is Mark? So we arrange the visit to Olympic House for Silvana tomorrow.
She's a lucky girl.
Thank you so much.
Huh? Okay, then Mark, he will take care of you. Okay.
So I can learn from the IOC too.
Let's see, have a look, and then Mark, do it at the time when then I can maybe share at least an espresso with Silvana, or
And then I will come with the difficult questions in German.
No,
okay, welcome.
I think that.
So see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
I think that it's important that it was possible for us to have this session of our e-college here in Lausanne, because I think that from here people will understand better our relation that we have with the world of sport to help the young generation to grow. because this is our aim. And I think that now there is the official signature on the
I
book.
think we're going to first of all present the very first copy to the president, and I am really relieved to hear that you have a sense of humor, because a lot of people said to me, "Are you crazy writing this book? You look at the way some of the cartoons, how they present the IOC, you'll lose your Olympic accreditation. You'll never go to another Olympic Games ever." So to be in the Olympic House, in the Olympic Museum, presenting the unofficial and completely unsanctioned Olympic history to the IOC president, I mean, coming from somebody who spent much of his career at the IOC trying to close down anything that was unofficial or unsanctioned and going after all forms of ambush marketing, it's a special moment to be presenting this official, unofficial Olympic history. And I mean, President, I know you don't have a lot on your plate at the moment. It's a sort of fairly relaxing time on the last 50 days to the Games. So I hope that as you sort of look through the book, it'll give you lots of light moments. Yeah, you're there. You're next to Pierre.
No, there. No, these here 50 days to go. Tokyo 2020. Here we go.
Yeah. And I hope that this will bring back a lot of memories. I think if there is one key takeaway for me from this book is actually the resilience of the IOC. That you look over 125 years, all of the challenges, the problems, the issues, and the Games still come through stronger and stronger. So with this, sir, I would like to present to you the first book.
You're a weightlifter now.
Contrary to you, I can carry it.
I'm weak.
If I may, sir, I think as you're aware, this whole project is for charity. We have 4 great charities, from disabled sport to cartooning for peace, peace and sport, and the Yunus Sports Hub, because the work that Professor Yunus is doing for youth, COVID, disadvantaged communities, these 4 charities will all benefit from the sale of the book. And we're running a auction with 1 or 2 of the cartoons, and would very much like to invite you, sir, just to sign 1 book that will go off as part of the auction. So if that's yours, because it's got a dedication in there. But
1 is enough, because 2 after too heavy. No, but the most important thing is also that what I told, that because even cartoons sometimes can be controversial, is a good.
Now let me write, because you know I'm not a woman. I cannot multitask. So,
I'm not good at multitasking too, actually. No, not really.
huh? But, sometimes I can, but in this case I need to concentrate.
Concentrate.
Otherwise it could be something humorous.
Or you can make a draw.
But that would be terrible. You know, my drawing talents are like my musical talents, and not really existing, besides my name.
Mm-hmm. You're writing a book.
I have to add to the 5 kilos. Today is
the
Third.
50 days to go.
June, huh?
June, yeah.
Just
2021. I'm fighting too often Tokyo 2020, so it's good to advise me. Do I need to behave as if? Yeah, there we go. Great, thank you very much.
If cartoons would be an Olympic discipline, this would be winning the gold medal.
This is perfect. You are a poet also.
At some time, cultural works were part of the Olympic program.
Yeah.
Coubertin even winning a gold medal in poetry. So, you know, it gave me food for thought.
This is good. No, but I think that it is important, because what I've written also about the cartoons, and also the discussion that can rise sometimes, is something that help more transparency, because when you talk, you can discuss openly. The transparency is there, especially in sport, no? Because we have to begin to discuss again in the proper way. Sometimes we are losing our mind, and it's time that we go with culture to increase the level of sport. So we try. I don't know if we will succeed, but we will try at least. So she's a lucky girl. So so we will see next in October, November with the young reporter.
You want to do it in September, October here?
Why not?
Okay, whenever circumstances allow, and Silvana I will see then tomorrow, and
she will be the team leader. She will be the team leader at this point.
I'll see you in Tokyo.
For sure.
50 days to go.
Yes, we will be there enjoying and trying. It is a special, you know, you passed through Munich. I passed through Munich, through the boycott and everything. Tokyo is a nice occasion that we have to see another kind of situation, no? But I'm sure that we will restart properly.
The Chinese blessing is may you live in interesting times, and I think we cannot complain in this respect.
Not
see
at
you.
all. Thank you very much. We can make a photo as this, no? No, the photo, the photographer. Thank you. With the ladies also. With the ladies also.
Everybody here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can do one. You want?
Yeah. So. We look as a weightlifter now. Ciao, Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bis morgen.
So now, guys, we can begin looking to 50 days to Tokyo, and I would like to ask to our technician that the Storm company is incredible good to launch the cartoon of our colleague Bouhimid Belaid. This is the first. This is the first, and you can see was regarding the money and some IOC member. Next. This is I think that is back, that he went from 2020 to 21. Next. These are the two symbols, the two mascots playing with the corona. Next. This is the distance. Keep the distance in the competition, no? 1.5 meters. This is the podium with the distance. But these cartoons were done last year. And look how are already so modern. Still. Next. And this is the flag of the IOC with the new coronavirus system. This is Belaid. Belaid is with us. I don't know if we can speak with him immediately, but I have asked him also to send us new draw of this, our meeting, and in time, so we will show to you, because this is the part in which usually is expressing himself, because he's a guy that immediately he has the idea, he's a great journalist, and as I told you, as president of the African Association, has done a lot for us. So now we can begin to speak about 50 days to Tokyo. And are here with us Shinzuke Kobayashi and Hiroshi Takeuchi. I would like to invite Shinzuke to tell us how is the situation in this moment in Tokyo. Shin, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello, Jenny. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The voice.
No? How is this? Better?
No voice.
Do you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. Well, hi everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I will quickly talk about what the situation is like in Tokyo and Japan. Well, the general view is the 10 prefectures, including Tokyo, out of 47 prefectures in Japan, are under a state of emergency. And the number of new infections, which was rather high last several weeks, it is improving. It is getting a little less, but the specialists and the scientists are still very cautious and skeptical about the Olympics. And even though the situation is a bit more stable than before, I think there is a chance of this variant virus kind of making another explosion of infections. So we cannot be too optimistic at this moment. But if I may tell you my personal views, to me, it looks that things started to look a little different since the turn of the month. When it became June. On the 1st of June, the Australian softball team arrived in Japan for their pre-game training camp. And they are the first foreign team arriving in this country as a participant of the Olympic Games. And I think that had an impact. Well, there was a very negative sentiment toward the Olympics, and people are blaming about the Olympics, and all the frustration was going toward the Olympics. I felt, that the Olympics is a bit like a scapegoat or something. All the frustration became an attack to the Olympics. But when you see these Australian girls arriving in the airport, people see the real human smiling. People deemed the Olympics as kind of a evil or all the bad things coming to the country. But you see all these, faces with smile. I think people started to see things a little bit differently. Also, the very slow vaccination in Japan is now has started to speed up. The Olympic athletes and the Japanese representative started to get vaccinated since the 1st of June as well. The Japanese Olympic Committee is conducting their vaccination since the 1st of June. Of course, there were a criticism of jumping in the queue and why the athletes before the elderly and so on. But vaccination as a whole is speeding up, and from later this month, there will be some companies or the universities will have a big group vaccination project. So even though it was rather slow in vaccination, the vaccination is improving. And I think when the effect of the vaccinations appear, which is the number of new infections to be reduced, I think the feeling and emotion of the people will start to change. So we'll see how it goes in the next 50 days. I am hoping the things will go for better. And by the time of the opening of the Olympics, situation has improved, and we can smile each other and welcome the people from around the world.
Shizuke, but
yes.
how you feel? You are optimist or not? Or you are still cautious?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
So this is already a big step forward, eh?
I think so, and I hope so. As I said, it looks a little bit different since the beginning of June. So we'll see.
Okay, so this is a nice thing. Now I would like to have on the screen Hiroshi Takeuchi with his 16 Olympics in his history. How is his feeling, and when he has felt in a special situation before a games as this time? Hiroshi, are
Good
you
evening,
there?
Gianni.
Yeah.
I don't have much to add what my colleague Shinsuke told. Good evening, Michael. Maybe people of Japan are very sensible to look the situation, and this is a very sensitive issue, but we are very, sensible and easy to look protective, and that's I think the reason why quite a few people are still holding a negative view on the Olympic Games. But last 3-4 weeks, the numbers of the contagious, case declining, not drastically, gradually, but I think it's a steadily gradual decline we are now seeing. So yesterday, the day before yesterday, or a chief advisor on this issue from the medical world with the government, Dr. Omi said, it is not normal to stage the Olympic Games under pandemic. Yes, it's true, but I believe with a certain restriction of the pandemic, we can stage the Olympic Games. And as Shinsuke told us, the day before yesterday, Australian women's softball team arrived, and they will stay until the game's over. And now people easy to realize, the games is already, around the corner. The games will come. I think the feeling will be, establishing some certainty. There are many uncertainty before, but gradual certainty is coming. That's the general, I think, situation. And within this month, 500,000 shots will be coming. And by the time of the opening day of the Olympic Games, maybe 100 million shots. So the population is, 125 million. So by the time of the opening ceremony day, it is not achievable to shot every citizen of Japan, but quite a few, perhaps nearly half of the whole population will get vaccinated, and the negative view coordinate with the slow development of vaccination. If the vaccination get speed, the negative feeling should be declining. That's my view.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear, because I think that you and Shizuka, you have the experience of the Olympics, so you can judge the situation very deeply. And as, for example, we in Italy, we have already, I think, near 30% of the population that is vaccinated, and the situation is much better than before, because we put in safe situation the people that are older. Now is began also the vaccination of the young people. So now in Italy, everything is beginning to be reopened completely. There are still some close number for the stadia and so on, but this is normal. But the life is coming back. But in this moment, because we are speaking about Tokyo, especially, and here we have our guest that is not only the author of a book, but Michael, in his position of marketing man, he has reminded me something that it happened in Tokyo in 1964, because Tokyo has given some new thing, or not, open new doors.
Absolutely. Tokyo 64 was a symbolic moment for Japan, stepping out onto the world stage. Although, interestingly, from some of the research I've done, the Japanese people were not super positive to those games in the lead up to those games. They were scared that maybe the country wasn't ready to step out, that they might embarrass themselves on the world stage, and public opinion and support was not super strong. The games were an incredible success, and ever since then, I think the games have played a very sort of unique role in sort of the Japanese culture and psyche. But just some interesting little sort of color stories that came out of Tokyo 64. Today, people sort of sometimes criticize the commercialization of the Olympic Games. Even though the games have no advertising in the stadium and have stricter controls than any other sports event. But what do you think the most successful, biggest money generating official product was of the 64 Olympic Games?
Maybe Hiroshi knows, but I don't know. I doubt.
It was the official Olympic cigarette.
Exactly.
Which the State Tobacco Bureau got a license to call Olympias. And it was the biggest money spinner of all the different licensed products, the official Olympic cigarette. So all you can actually say is how times change. But another relationship, and this one's a very interesting one, I think, between Tokyo 64 and Tokyo 2021. One of the IOC's key top partners is the company Alibaba, the Chinese technology e-commerce giant. But increasingly, they're becoming more well-known for their cloud technology. And they're providing all of the cloud technology to the IOC. And before COVID, this cloud technology was going to be tested as part of the broadcasting for the games. And eventually to see if they could reduce the number of people that all the engineers and technical people had to go to the games, they could stay back in the studios. Still the reporters and others will be going, but that you could make the operations a lot simpler. And 18 months ago, they were expecting perhaps 1% of the broadcast would experiment with cloud. COVID, the forecast now is that 30% of the host broadcast will be delivered on cloud. And by Paris or Milano, potentially 100%. But I asked the head of broadcasting, I said, so this sounds like quite an important technological innovation. When was the last time there was such a big technological revolution in broadcasting? And he looked at me and said, Tokyo, 1964, was the first games to introduce the satellite. And so again, I think you'll see these games becoming a sort of a marker for absolute game-changing aspects within the industry.
This is important. So after, now I think that what we can speak about the Olympics this time, 50 days to Tokyo, with some people that are telling, no, it's better to stop the games and so on. We have witnessed in the last 50 years, many moments in which people were telling it's time to stop the games. In 1768, when there was the big massacre just before the beginning of the game in Mexico City, with hundreds of people killed. But the game went on. 72, with the terrorist attack in Munich, that there was the discussion, the games has to continue or not. But after they decide to continue, and I think that was the right choice. After we have the 2 boycotts, and I think that I remember when I was in Lake Placid in the Winter Olympic in 1980, when the Americans, they told we will not go to Moscow, and they invited all the other Western countries not to go over there. In that moment, there was the reaction of the press against the fact that they wanted to limit the freedom of the athlete and also to destroy their career. So the press has begun to support the IOC movement that was dying in this moment, because after the 1976 games, the situation was going to the bankruptcy for the IOC. And here we are very glad that we have Michael, because after Moscow, that has begun the new era of the Olympic Games, especially because without the Americans and many other countries, many other champions present, other nation has received a lot of medals, and so was the best promotion for sport. The same thing was in LA, but in LA, I think that here Michael can tell, because he was a fresh guy in the marketing of the Olympics, no? How much it was in the bank of the IOC before these games, and what happened after? Michael.
Well, Gianni, you make a point that I think, to be honest, a lot of people forget that at the beginning of the 1980s, the IOC was bankrupt.
Sure.
And there was no money in the bank. There's a story which I tell in the book, where when President Samaranch took over the IOC presidency in 1980, and he came to Lausanne, and 2 weeks later, he looked at the financial accounts and he thought, what have I done? And he seriously thought about resigning the presidency because there was no way to pull this through. And thank God he didn't resign. But if you look at the commentators at the time, they were saying, yeah, the games have served the 20th century very well, but they've become too big. They've become a pawn in the sort of political Cold War superpower. Nobody wants to host the games. I mean, people forget, for the 1984 games in Los Angeles, there were actually only 2 candidates. The first one was Tehran, and then they had a little change of management at the top, and the Ayatollahs didn't think it was a good idea to stage the Olympics. And Los Angeles was looking at what had happened in Montreal with all the financial bankruptcy, which wasn't the games, but it was the capital spending spree that went on around the games. And so Los Angeles said, we like the Olympics, but we don't want to pay for it. And so there was a public vote. more than 90% opposed to putting any public money in. And so for a lot of people, they said, well, that's the end of the road of the Olympics. And even if you could persuade a city to take on the games, and you spent 7 years planning, odds on half the countries wouldn't turn up because you were caught up in some boycott issue. So it really was an incredibly dark, existential moment as to whether the Olympics would ever survive. And the first thing that Samaranch set about doing, and I was hired to be the first director, was to build a marketing program to develop the broadcast rights, but to develop them beyond America, because it was only America that was paying. And no business strategy has all of their eggs in one basket. Because at the time, the American Congress was saying, why are we paying all this money to Lausanne? We should be paying it to the US team. We're not going to pay any money. And it came that close to creating a cartel. They petitioned the Congress to get an exemption on the Competitive Practices Act. So we diversified the television and we launched the top program, which was this IOC's worldwide sponsorship program. And I think in the early 80s, we were very happy to get a company to pay $6 million for the 4 years. One or two of the top partners in Tokyo are paying $600 million. So clearly, from a marketing, from a business standpoint, it's working for the companies. And today, with all the talk of the sort of billions of dollars, people forget how close we came to not making it to the next games.
So now I would like to reintroduce our mentors that can also begin to ask questions to our guest, Riccardo Romani, Kay Rednage, Martin Mazur, and Jean-Paul Savard. Are you there, guys? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Who is the first to ask?
Here.
Kier, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever. Hi, Gianni. Michael, great to see you. Thank you very much for giving us your time again. The one question that I'm always curious to ask you is how far financially do you think that, I mean, I was going to say the Olympics, but high-level elite world sport in general will be able to go in the next years with broadcasting rights valuations? Simple question, but thank you very much.
That's a great question, and one that a lot of people are sort of asking the question, have broadcast rights peaked? Is it possible that the principal revenue generator of the major sports events, can the broadcast rights just continue to go up and up and up? And I think in a lot of the developed markets, you're probably seeing a peak, and that it is difficult to sustain the broadcast rights through what I would call the traditional free-to-air model. You're seeing in other parts of the world, from China to the Middle East to Latin America, still a significant increase in rights fees as they sort of catch up, and there's a sort of a balance through with the economy. So I don't think there's going to be dramatic growth on the traditional TV rights. Where there will be phenomenal growth is on the whole future of digital data and how the property rights owner, whether it's the International Olympic Committee or the Wrestling Federation, is able to create a dialogue one-on-one with their fan. Now, at the moment, you take wrestling, it probably isn't big enough to make it onto prime time television in most countries. That's not to say there isn't a strong wrestling fan base. And that's true for every sport. And the evolution of the digital technology will allow you to create a whole new engagement. And, if you think about it, 4.5 billion people will watch the Olympics. The television rights for Tokyo, I know because it's not normally split out games because you've got summer, winter together, but let's just say that Tokyo, $3 billion. You start creating the opportunity for a direct dialogue and support where you charge $1 a person. You're quite happy to go and spend $20 to go to the cinema or the ticket. So the future is actually very bright, but it is going to require a complete change in the model. In the same way as on sponsorship, you're seeing a complete change in the model, evolving from being passive, watching your advertising sign at the back of the stadium and a ticket, to the whole digital data technology creating an engagement, creating a dialogue, creating a sense of ownership. So it's fascinating times. And I don't think if the managers are properly on the case, one's going to suddenly see anybody going back to bankruptcy, unless you're a football club that is totally overspending the revenue that's coming in, and you've got a level of inflation, like in any business, that is out of control.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's one of the concerns I think that a lot of people have, that many sports federations, particularly if you like at the high end of the market, have grown so accustomed to the idea that their nice broadcasting rights package is going to be there for forever and ever kind of thing, and they've I don't know, maybe become a bit lazy about really taking care of the value. The other thing I was going to ask you, and this comes off the back of what you said about digital, is that I see very clearly the value of stream technology for what we might call minority sports. I just wonder, because it seems to me that streaming for minority sports will be largely sort of preaching into their own market, whether there is serious financial strength in that ongoing, or whether that's a little bit of an illusion.
Well, I think you make a couple of important points. One, no question that certain sports bodies are living beyond their means, have got too comfortable, too lazy, and are just assuming that the cash cow is going to keep coming. And it's going to be a mother of a wake-up call when suddenly, a bit like the IOC in the early 80s, with all of your eggs in one basket. Highly dangerous strategy. And that risks happening with a few federations or clubs, that they're going to suddenly wake up one day and somebody says, no, I'm not interested to renew. Well, then what? I think on the streaming issue, yeah, you can't just suddenly put your signal out there and expect everybody to come and watch. You're going to have to become far more in tune with how you market your sport. And market your sport is, how do you go out and connect with your existing fan base and keep them engaged and connected? Because there's far more choice today. 40 years ago, you could sit, the kids at home in front of the TV, and there's one channel to watch. Now there's 1,000 channels. So you're competing against Disney, you're competing against Netflix. So you have got to become a good marketeer in your own right. But we've seen in certain aspects under COVID as to how health, sport, people's sense of well-being has been growing, and the sports bodies have got to plug into that trend. Even if it's, you look at the people with cycling, and they're now, one of the most, I think it's a company that's worth billions already, which purely does cycle races from the gym at your home. and it's all interconnected, so you can compete against people in Los Angeles or China. So there's a whole revolution coming. Do all the sports leaders understand? No. But that doesn't mean that the potential and the opportunity isn't there.
Now
Thank
we
you.
go to Ricardo.
Yes, I have a question for Hiroshi, because I really want to go back to Tokyo for a second.
The voice disappeared.
Did you hear that I'm looking for Hiroshi? Hi, Hiroshi. We read a lot of stories and 6 months about Japan and the vaccine. And we know by experience how badly the media has performed all over the world through the COVID time in spreading disinformation, in spreading theories that were not proven. So I'm going to ask you this. Is that true that one of the reasons why the vaccine it's so slow in Japan is also linked to the lack of trust of foreign vaccine? Is something that Japan people feels not comfortable enough to have to rely to a vaccine that's coming from overseas, from abroad. How true is this sentence? Please help us. Can you put the mic? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Citizens of Japan strongly criticize the slow decision of the government to introduce the vaccination. So unfortunately, there are no single, vaccine manufacturing company in Japan. So we have to buy, and to decide, which company is best suited to Japan, maybe the decision making is was very slow. That's why the introducing vaccination was slow. So that slow decision, made people put people in a very negative mood. Without vaccination we should not stage the game. That's the feeling, growing. It's not the fault of the media. It's I think the strategic mismanagement of the government, and the Olympic host country should have acted earlier. That's definitely. And but once started, I think the volume of vaccination is quite big, and we are now catching up. Not completely accomplished before the opening ceremony day, but the volume of my first shot will come next Monday, and and some local city decided to vaccinate the younger generation, passing through the middle age. The elder people are primary, they have the privilege to be vaccinated, and some city authority decided the young 20 30 years old young people are more active than the other generation, so that they are potentially transfer the transfer or the contagion. And maybe, some authorities, some, city take their own way to speed up the vaccination. And once the vaccination is, with high speed and the negative view is declining, I believe so. 50 days, I think.
Hiroshi, so one day when we will be in Tokyo, we have perhaps the chance to go to dinner together again. Because for now it's not possible. For now we are we are in a kind of cage. So now we go to Martin from South America, the voice of South America.
Hello. I have a question for Michael. Michael, last year you spoke about in a college. I remember the reunion, the sense of mankind celebrating, pulling this off, the Olympic Games. So if you have now if you have the chance of, let's say, traveling time to August the 8th, what cartoon would you like to see printed in the book summing up the Olympic Games in Tokyo?
That's a great question. And it's true. I mean, a year ago, I think, like many people, nobody could imagine that the COVID pandemic would still be actively in play. I think everybody felt that a 1 year's postponement, would give the breathing space, and that Tokyo would represent a true celebration of humanity pulling through this pandemic. Sadly, that's not going to be the case. It's going to take longer. Although I think the world coming together, and as countries start to work their way through it, it will be a strong sign of the resilience against against the pandemic, and sort of to pull through. The book actually opens with a series of cartoons that were produced around the postponement decision last year, and there was some great cartoons from America, from New Zealand, from Japan. Roger Dahl has done some great stuff with, I think it's the Japanese Times. And the Olympics has always been a great sort of platform to inspire cartoonists, from the focus on the athletes, the focus on the doping, on the scandals. So I'm certain that there will be a lot of great cartoons come through. But I mean, the one that I would like to see on the 8th of August, I suppose it would be something where the final acknowledgement, or the acknowledgement that actually it worked. It was a great celebration, and Japan was able to put on a great Olympic Games. There's a cartoon in the book which was published in England, focused on the 5 rings. That the first ring, you've got the person celebrating wildly at the city being a selected host, and then you see depression and negativity sort of spill in through the second ring, the third ring, and at the 4th ring, well, maybe it's going to be all right. And the 5th ring is suddenly a great celebration, and every single politician claiming credit that it was all their idea and that they drove it through. So perhaps, I mean, I'm convinced that Japan will stage an incredible Olympic Games, even under all the constraints of being in the bubble and not having the sort of engagement, interaction between the international foreign visitors and the Japanese people. But they're innovative, and I think they will pull off something very special. And the final cartoons will be, it was worth hanging in there. It came together.
So now we go to Jean-Paul Savard. The micro, Jean-Paul. Jean-Paul, the micro. Yes, put down. Micro.
I thought I was not allowed to deal myself with the microphone. Excuse me. I thought it was the staff. I was very surprised to hear that the softball team of Australia arrived in Japan 2 months before the Olympic, while the vast majority of the Japanese population is afraid of the arrival of many people in Japan, while very few coaches will be able to come with their athletes, and these coaches will be only able to stay for a very short time with their athletes. I just spoke with the coach of Melina Robert-Michon. He will have to stay maybe 2-3 days and then to give his accreditation to another coach and to leave the floor to other coach. So my question is first to Koyabashi or Hiroshi, what does the population of Japan think of this arrival? Do they agree with that? Because we know they are against these Olympic Games. And the same question should be to Michael as a cartoon artist. What is the draw you would do with this information to explain how it was possible that the softball team arrived 2 months before? And in other words, I heard that maybe Kobayashi said that the arrival says that now it is too late to go back. The Olympic Games are now arrival. So first of all, to Kobayashi or Hiroshi, what is the feeling of the population of that event? About.
So may I? Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. I can't say, for the whole, on behalf of the whole people, but I wouldn't say everybody's unhappy. Some people are welcoming, and of course there are people who are still doubtful and skeptical about the arrival of foreign people. But for instance, the mayor of the city of a little small town called Ota, where the Australian softball team will be stationed and trained until the games, was very positive about their arrival, and he's very happy and welcoming the team. And also, of course, for the 14 days, they have to follow a very strict quarantine policy. But this mayor is trying to find some way to get around and make them a little more relaxed and give them freedom to hopefully visit some other places other than hotel and the training ground. So I wouldn't say everybody's opposing to against the arrival of foreign people. So, and I think once actual tangible people come and there, I think people's feeling and the sentiment will change very dramatically. That's my view. If Mr. Takeuchi can add something.
After with all the vaccination.
I think no one will be having a anti-feeling to the smiling young female athletes, waving hands, and they seem to be very happy to land the Olympic country, and they will start nearly 2 months training, playing with local club, and I think a general perception of Japanese people when they watch the Australian softball athletes on TV, positive, and they make them laugh. And yeah, I think they, cold ice, start to be melting I believe.
Good. I think that you have given the image, but I think that the idea of the Australian team is very good. They want to, and if especially if they play with Japanese club, it means that after the so-called quarantine of 14 days, after they will be able to go out also from the bubble, because I think that now that the vaccination is increasing a lot, as in every country here in Europe, something will be more open than before. Maybe that in Japan, after 1 month, we will see that there will be less restriction than before. There will be restriction anyway, anytime, for the mask in the closed area and so on. But I think that will be possible to go a little bit more around. I hope so, because if not the Olympics for the journalists, this time will be very different than any other time, and not easy at all. Now, I think that we can open the floor. There are any question from the floor? Raise your hand. I see one hand, two hand already. I think that from here, because I'm very far from the video, somebody of you has to give the floor to the Ricardo. Can you give the floor to somebody?
No, no.
You can't see?
I can give the floor to Luani Picado.
Yes.
Luani Picado from Nicaragua. Luani.
Mi nombre es Luani Picado de Nicaragua, residida en Holanda. Mi pregunta es a los periodistas que están en Tokio y que me den una radiografía, porque hasta el momento hemos hablado del romanticismo de hacer las Olimpiadas con las restricciones que hay, pero se ha hecho realmente un estudio de lo que podría pasar o el impacto post Juegos Olímpicos. Estamos hablando del impacto humano de realizar estos juegos en medio de una pandemia, porque el New England Journal of Medicine dijo que la decisión del COI no se basa en la mejor evidencia científica, al igual que el Medical Journal, en una editorial habló de que reconsideran la realización de estos juegos, y la unión del sindicato de médicos en Tokio también. Entonces, a mí me parece que más allá de las pérdidas millonarias y económicas que podría tener el COM si no se hacen los juegos, también hay que estudiar y validar un poco cuál sería la afectación en la calidad humana una vez que se hagan los juegos, y hacer una radiografía de impacto que tendría humano luego de la realización de estos juegos. Bye.
La pregunta para quién era.
Para los periodistas, o lástima que el señor Bach pues se marchó, pero eso también sería para él, pero o cualquiera que pueda contestarla, o estimación u opinión, pues me imagino que los de Tokio podrían contestarlo, ¿no? Que están allá.
Shinsuke, did you understand the question? Or Hiroshi?
I'm sorry, I don't have the translation. I don't.
Okay, so the question is if there was a study, in Japan about what happens after the Olympic Games. What's the impacts? Given that she quoted two medical journals that stated that it wasn't a good decision, or at least there was not enough evidence to host the games. So if there was a study in Japan about what would happen with the population and the human impact after the games.
Unfortunately, I don't have any data or any study. Did she say she has seen something in the report, or She's asking me if I have any knowledge of that.
No, if you have any on top of what would be the loss of money if the games are not hosted in Japan, if there is also a study regarding what happens, Luani, you said with the population, the human aspect of hosting the games, right?
Well, there are many hypotheses and many scholars are saying different things. So I can't say for sure, and I don't remember everything. But of course, if the games were not hosted, then there will be a big financial loss. But some economists also say that even if the games not hosted, or whether or not the games held, the financial loss just caused by the COVID-19 is much bigger than the impact of the games happened or not happened. So there are many theories, and I can't really give you any good example or studies. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Shinsuke. Gianni, I cannot hear you.
If you give me the voice, yes. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, now I would like to make the question to Michael. How much can be, from the point of view of finance, the loss will be big if you don't stage the game, or is bigger to make the game?
Well, it depends who you're talking about. I mean, I think in the end, if the games are not staged, everybody will be losing. In the case of the IOC, maybe it is not quite as much as the media is trying to represent. You know, forgive me, but all of these story and headlines, where the media, the IOC is only driving this forward because it needs the money. Nothing could be further from the truth. Let's be very clear. From the sponsorship standpoint, the IOC has all of its top sponsorship agreements in place until 2028 or even 2032. If the games don't take place, there's no refund. So they already have the long-term structure in place. If you take the broadcasting revenue, going back to when I joined in the mid-80s, one of the first things that we did was to insure the games, to insure the broadcast rights, because that was the only revenue source you had. And at the time, you were dealing with the boycotts, and it was feasible that maybe a games can't be staged. And losing the TV rights when it's your only source of revenue, it would then be game over. So the IOC introduced an insurance policy for a significant part of the coverage of the rights fee. So the impact, I mean, the reason the IOC is driving forward is not from a financial standpoint. It really is to try and ensure the opportunity is there for a generation of athletes, because I think half of the athletes only compete in the Olympic Games once, that they have their single opportunity. That's the driver. If you take the Japanese organizers, they've built all the venues, they've done all the heavy lifting. Their financial exposure is probably a lot greater. But the biggest sort of loss isn't the accounting over the 2 weeks of the games. It's the long-term brand image legacy that, whether it's to redefine, what made in Japan means, to redefine the image and the brand of Japan, to redefine Japanese tourism. You look at the recent games, it's not the economic boost of the 2 weeks. Tourism in London was down because people were scared to go to the city because it's all going to be locked up. Tourism in Barcelona, in most cities, during the period of the games, tourism is down. But a year later, tourism in London was up 5% from South America, from China, and it stays up there. You know, the growth, that's an incalculable benefit of billions and billions of dollars. That's what one of the reasons you host the games is not to get a payback for the closing ceremony. You know, to be honest, the restaurants are not going to be happy because everybody's either in the venue. The visitors don't have a lot of time to go out to lots of restaurants. They're running from venue to venue, or the families are staying at home to watch. So you actually see a reduction in a lot of what would be the traditional areas, but a massive boost that then can last a decade or more afterwards. So I think if you're wanting to calculate what is the loss, for Japan, and I would agree with your Japanese colleagues that there are a lot of studies out there. It's all a bit hypothetical, but it will be a lot.
Okay, next question. Martin, give it the floor.
Next question for Wojciech from Poland. Wojciech.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my question is, I think to Michael, because it's kind of marketing question. Because due to pandemics, we've seen surely the big boost in the souvenir market of masks. So it became kind of souvenir. Every bigger competition has its souvenir. Every bigger sport brand has its, any brand has its own like mask for the face, anti-COVID mask. And my question is, when the pandemic is over and we come back to normality, whatever normality will mean in the future, will that trend of collecting masks as souvenir have an impact on the Olympics, for the future Olympics, for Paris, for Los Angeles, and so on?
Honestly, I think I'd say I hope not. I hope that the era of having to wear a mask all of the time, that once we are through the pandemic, I think everybody will be quite happy to put the masks, back in the drawer. Will the pandemic have introduced a whole new mindset on awareness, on health, on sanitation, and launch certain new industries? Absolutely. But I think the idea of the collector mask, I think, is probably something which I think most people will be quite glad to see the back of.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yes, we have Hashem Ali from Yemen. Hashem?
Yes. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jenny, for chance to speak. Actually, I speak Arabic. My question.
Okay, so we will have also Nadine ready for translate.
Okay.
There is the simultaneous translation.
Okay, are you hearing? Okay, perfect.
Okay. طبعا نحن اليوم على مسافة 50 يوم من انطلاق طوكيو. هناك الكثير من المخاوف اليابانيين، وخصوصا نقط الصحف الآسيوية والأوروبية، أن أكثر من 70% مع إيقاف أو إلغاء هذا الحدث الرياضي. لكن في المقابل يعبر القائمون على الألعاب الأولمبية عن ثقة كبيرة لإبقائها في موعدها، مؤكدين أنهم سيتمكنوا من تنظيم ألعاب آمنة وغير مخيفة. ما هي الضمانات حتى لا يكون هناك إصابات في المستقبل؟ وأيضا ما هي آثارها الاقتصادية وخصوصا السلبية؟ شكرا.
First of all, I think that we can ask also to our Japanese colleague, but the problem is that till now, for the participant from abroad that will go to Japan, you have to follow the rules that are in place. So when you arrive in Tokyo and you are an accredited journalist, you have to bring with you the test that we have done. You have done 72 hours before and after. I think that at that point they will consider also the vaccination, because many of the people that will arrive in Tokyo, athlete or journalist or other, will be vaccinated. But you must always arrive with the test that must be negative, done 72 hours ago, before. After, there will be another test that you will be submitted at the arrival. After, you will go to the hotel, and you can move from the hotel only to take the so-called personal transportation that are organized by the organizer of the games. You can go to the press center. You can go to the facility where there are the competition. But before 4 weeks before arrival in Tokyo, you have to send to the organizer what are your plans, where you will go from your hotel, the press center, and to which facility. So you have to send them the map of where you will go when you are there. For now, for the first 14 days, you have to follow this kind of life. So you will be in a kind of bubble, safe bubble. And after 14 days, you will be allowed to go around the city as a Japanese, I hope, because till now we have not seen the last book that the organizer will send to us to know exactly what will be our behavior. And I think that in 2 weeks we will receive the next information. But for sure, the organizers are trying to put in place all the measures that will be safe for us that we are going there, but also for the Japanese citizen. What we can ask to Shinzuke, how will be also the work of the journalists in Japan, because they have also to follow some rules. Shinzuke? Shinzuke is still with us, or?
Yeah.
Because, yes.
So you're asking me about the Japanese local journalists, how we have to conduct it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, fortunately, the rules are much more relaxed than the reporters from abroad. We will have to use this special app to report our health 14 days prior to our work for the Olympics. And during the games, I think there is probably virtually no restriction for now. I think as the rule book, playbook version 2 says that I don't think we have much restrictions. So, but we don't know. I mean, the people coming from abroad are more vaccinated than the Japanese, and we don't know which is the bubble. I mean, maybe you are safer and we are the dirty ones. So we'll see how it goes.
So you agree with me that many things can change in the next month, in the next 40 days, some situation can change due to the new situation that is facing everybody in the different country with the vaccination. Because with 100 million people vaccinated in Japan, I think that you are completely safe. There are no chance that can be dangerous anymore, I think. Next question.
We have Koshal.
Koshal Taib from Afghanistan.
Koshal Taib. Hi.
Hello. Hello, Johnny. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. My question is to my Japanese friend. As you know, this time will be more related games to media, because media will have big role in this games and this Olympic. most of because of COVID-19, more people will not travel to Japan. So what facilities, what special facilities will Japan provide to the media or international media?
Well, I'm not representing the organizing committee, so I can't. I'm just your fellow journalist. But what I hear from the organizing committee is that they will heavily use the remote press conferences, like medalist press conference or the daily briefing will be live streamed on info, and it will be downloadable afterward. That's what they say. And also, all other press conferences will be somehow remotely covered, and you can ask questions remotely. That's what they promise at the moment. So, but for the mixed zone, there will be no online remote system. So that will be a problem probably for us, and they will limit the number of people who can access the mixed zone. So having access to the athletes directly will be a big problem for us. That's what I know from talking to the organizing committee at the moment.
Next question.
Iván Zavala from Nicaragua.
Ahora sí, ¿verdad?
Yes.
Perfecto. Buenos días, saludos a todos. Iván Zavala desde Nicaragua. Leíamos ayer en ESPN que hay 10,000 voluntarios que renunciaron a trabajar en los Juegos precisamente por el temor del contagio del COVID-19. Y otras noticias que generan cierta alarma, hace unos días también Estados Unidos emitía una alerta de no viajar a Japón. Entonces, irónico, ¿no? Porque ahí van a hacer los Juegos, estamos a 50 días, entonces todo eso genera incertidumbre y de cierta manera contrasta con lo que hoy se ha dicho en esta conferencia, donde aparentemente todo va mejorando y que los Juegos no van a tener contratiempos. ¿Cuál es la valoración, la visión, la opinión al respecto, sobre todo con esto, pues, de los voluntarios que han renunciado?
¿Para quién es la pregunta, Iván?
Cualquiera de los protagonistas que esté por ahí, no hay problema, no hay ningún problema. Me gustaría conocer incluso varias versiones, si es posible, varias respuestas.
Okay, Hiroshi and Shinsuke, I don't know if you've heard the question, but there was a report that 10,000 volunteers resigned due to the fear of COVID-19 contagion. Is this true? And then also there was an USA alert not to travel to Japan. So again, how can we measure this news with the hypothetical positive improvement of the situation in the country? Hiroshi?
Yes, the games volunteer, which those who are taking care of the athletes and the other technical issues, the total number is 80,000 on the schedule, and from 80,000, 10,000 people withdrew. So the 70,000 games volunteer will remain. I think that's a sufficient number of staff to take care of the athletes. And the regard with the US, the risk management alert level, they upgraded the Japanese danger situation. but the government allowed the delegation of the Olympic team of US to prepare their arrangement to go to Japan. And so the Team USA are free from that regulation to come to Japan. And I think they are well prepared by the time of the games.
If I may add, this 10,000 people, volunteers, withdraw from their work. The organizing committee revealed the number, but they haven't revealed the reason why they withdrew. Of course, some of them withdrew because of the fear of the COVID-19, but of course, after a year of postponement, their schedule wouldn't fit, or some people relocate from Tokyo to other cities, and there are, different reasons, and we don't know how many is withdrawing from which reason.
I think if we can jump in for a second, there is a great lesson in which we have seen from the very good question of Ivan to our guest colleague from Japan. You can twist a piece of information the way you want. If you publish a story and say that there are 10,000 volunteers resigning from the Tokyo Olympics, it can be a big news, a big breaking news. When you realize that 10,000 are just 10% of the total, is no longer a big piece of information. And if you go back to the London Olympics or to the previous Olympics, you realized that even then, there were people, volunteers, that resigned before the Olympics. Maybe not in the same number as this time, but yes, because, and we go to the next point, people have other commitments. People become sick. People, they decide not to go anymore. In this case, of course, a percentage of people resigning fear for their health. But we don't know the reason, because the reason were not published. And good journalism is to share that piece of information in the context. So you see, Ivan has a perception of things that were catastrophic. He checked his sources, and now it sounds normal. And I just checked, the 5,000 volunteers has resigned from London 3 weeks before London Olympics, for example. I don't know about Brazil, but probably it's the same. And you understand that something that might sound like a big breaking news is just a piece of information manipulated to create a sense of chaos.
Jenny, if I may, just to
Sure.
Just to reinforce that point, and I think your intervention was excellent, because people's circumstances do change. And I think in the case of Brazil, there were an awful lot of volunteers who turned up to get their free uniform and then didn't turn up at the games. And I think it was, if I may, more than 10,000. So the way that headlines are created without proper context or reference, I think is sort of fueling the panic and paranoia. Not, I mean, just on Olympics, but on multiple different other files. And it's something I've always tried to do is to give perspective and context and to understand on the history. I mean, the biggest challenge and issue with volunteers is how many turn up the second week, because they start to get tired. And, in Atlanta and in 1 or 2 games I've been involved with, it's been a major challenge to keep the morale and everything going for the volunteers. But I've seen the headlines in the last day or two, and it doesn't tell the full story. What was the real reason? And circumstances do change. People suddenly have kids. They can't. They have to apply for volunteering 2 or 3 years before the games. So who knows what your personal situation is going to be? So I think it is, it's beholden always on, on everybody to try and make sure that there is proper context, because the headline can be very misleading.
Next.
Next one, we have Mary J from Nigeria.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about the video. My connection is not so strong. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. And again, sorry if the question I am going to ask has already been asked or answered, dealt with before. The connection wasn't so bad, so pardon me for that. I'm coming from the human angle. I think since 2019, we've seen a rise in protests, various protests, most of them against bad governance, some of them against the COVID-19 and lockdowns and all of that. If you put into consideration the score from the polls within Japan, within Tokyo, whether or not the Olympic Games should go ahead, it's not been the most promising. It's been more negative. Most of the locals, most of the indigents there do not think that the Olympic Games should go ahead. So my question is are there fears, maybe from the NOC or from the IOC itself, of protests against the games going ahead in the coming weeks? And if there are such fears, are there mechanisms in place to deal with such protests should they arise? Personally, I don't want those kind of situations, but we have to consider them with everything that's been going on.
Shinzuke, do you think that there will be riots in Japan?
Careful, we are taping you. You know, we are recording. So.
Shinzuke,
okay.
or
yeah, I wasn't able to mute, take off the mute. Riot, I don't think it's likely. Yes, the public poll is not very promising. I mean, on May 15th and 16th, my news agency did the national poll, and 59.7% of the people said the game should be cancelled, and 25.2% said it should be held without spectators, and 12.6% said it can be held with the restricted number of spectators. So that's the fact. That's the result. It's not good, but it can change. If I, just for reference, on 10th to 12th of April, we did another poll. But unfortunately, the question is not exactly the same. 24.5% said we should host the games in this summer, and 39.2% said it should be cancelled, and 32.8% said it should be postponed again. So probably these 30% who said postpone again, 10% of them said it should be held, and the 20 went to cancellation. So, well, this is the result of the poll, just for your reference, but I don't think that leads to any riot or very strong opposition.
I was joking because, because looking to some news that are coming out, also sometimes very big fake news, it looks that people are so angry against, because for what we know, as also Michael told before, many of the country, even in LA, many people, when there was 84 Olympics, they went to holiday. They closed their work to go to holiday. In London, the same. In London, the same. In Athens, the same. The public went there because they didn't want to have extra traffic, extra zinc, and so on. But this is quite normal. If you ask to somebody, do you want to organize the games in your country? The most of the people will say, no, it's normal. I've never seen a poll that was positive when somebody has won the games.
Maybe Australia.
I was just going to add a note of caution on these polls. I think one's seen in recent times how often the political polling doesn't actually accurately reflect what is really happening. And the starting point is one, what is the question? And the pollster is able to twist or spin the answer based on the question. Two, what is the profile? What is the audience? And I've seen so many research studies that are basically false. They had an agenda, but when you actually look at where the question was coming from, how it was structured, it's often leading the witness. And I think one needs to have a note of caution. I also remember in the London Games, partly to Gianni's point, there was support for having the games, but before the bid, they decided, well, let's have the mayor wanted to have a poll. And Sepco, as president of the organizing committee, said, you do that, I resign. And he wasn't saying it because he didn't believe in democracy. But the point being, if the mayor had launched a poll, do you want to have the London Olympics? People would be voting not on the question, do they want to have the London Olympics, but on a whole series of then other issues, because they were angry with the mayor because of his transport policy. They were angry with the mayor because he was socialist and they were conservative. It is so easy to hijack these votes, or people vote subconsciously for other reasons, that it is becoming increasingly difficult to get a real, accurate insight. And the IOC has sort of suffered in recent years with the number of polling as to whether a host country should stage the games. And it's often not that people are opposed to the Olympics, but they don't have the facts, or it's been wrongly communicated, or the agenda has been hijacked to some other political issue. This whole environment now with the social, it makes it so easy to hijack an agenda to certain protest issues or groups. And I'm not talking just related to the Olympics, across the board. And I just note of caution when you just look at these numbers without understanding what is really behind it.
Now the last question, because after the time will be over. Last question.
Danilo, it was before early, and Ernesto, two more.
Ernesto Ortiz.
I can only one.
Ernesto Ortiz from Uruguay.
Ernesto Ortiz de Uruguay.
Okay, gracias. The first, a big hug to my friend Hiroshi from Uruguay. Martín, voy a solicitar tu ayuda simplemente por una cosa bien rápida. Los periodistas deportivos no podemos ignorar las dificultades que estamos teniendo en nuestra región y que atraviesan nuestros países, que están agudizadas por la pandemia. Y Japón, específicamente, tuvo poco más de 13.000 víctimas de COVID desde que empezó la pandemia. Y su pico máximo fue en enero y logró bajar los casos al 50%. La pregunta para los colegas de Japón es, independientemente de las vacunas, ¿cuáles fueron, en criterio de ellos, las medidas más efectivas que tomó el Estado en materia de apoyo sanitario y social para reducir las infecciones y las muertes?
Hiroshi, did you understand?
Martin, yes. Yeah, can you translate me? Gracias, Ernesto. No entiendo bien. So Martín me ayudó.
The question was about how Japan managed to decrease the infection when they peaked on January, especially now that in South America we are suffering a lot of this, and in our profession as well.
How does the government of Japan decrease the case of the congestion or?
Yes.
Yes.
I think there is no magic, and the only way to reduce the congestion is vaccination. So I think I said earlier, once the case of the vaccination will be staged in every Olympic, city and whole country, and the volume of vaccination can reduce the fear or negative view of people. I think it's a kind of the automatic, way in order to reduce the anti-Olympic view. The vaccination is only one magic, way to do so. I think.
Hiroshi, sorry,
Yes.
but the restriction, because for example in Europe there was not possible to go to the inside the restaurant. You cannot eat inside, but only outside.
Yeah.
There was the timing also of closing and so on. In Japan, what restriction you have as
currently in Tokyo, you cannot go out in the evening time to the restaurant in a certain time, and I think on the averagely 8 o'clock in the evening is the last order, and they cannot serve any alcohol at all. So without alcohol, people do not want to go out to dine, and the reduction of the customers will lead the infections in numbers. And but the owners of restaurants are unhappy, but I think this a strict regulation brought some concrete concrete reasons to reduce the infections in the city. I think it works well, and in a couple of weeks' time we will be lesser infections in town in the Olympic cities.
So in some way we close our session with a message of hope that you are sending from Japan. No, Hiroshi, from your. I want to remind to everybody that tomorrow will be the marathon of the tutorial meeting with the 4 languages. We begin in the morning and we finish late in the evening. So tomorrow we will speak again regarding the Olympics in Tokyo. What will happen? We will speak also about the cartoon. I hope that Belaid will be with us, so he will explain exactly what the cartoon, how he expressed himself with the cartoon. And I hope that next week we will have the final session of our e-college of 2021. We will speak about journalism. We will have the guy that has won the award for the color piece. Is very emotional because even yesterday, FIS, the Federation of International Winter Sport, they decide and they also as implement that some wax cannot be used anymore when they prepare the ski. And this also for this article that has created the problem. And after we will speak also about robots and journalism. And I say you bye from the museum. I thank Michael, I thank Silvana, I thank all the people that has worked for us, all our staff, and especially the guy that we have found here of the storm agency that is sending us this image, because we made together a miracle in few minutes before the start. And guys, see you tomorrow for the second tutorial after this session. bye to everybody. I would like to see you waving your hand.